Welcome back to the Airbnb Superhost Secrets podcast, where we like to, really kind of get into the nitty-gritty of becoming a top-rated host. All those like picture-perfect Airbnb listings that make hosting seem like a total breeze. Well, we're going to dive deep into the reality behind the scenes, the stuff they don't always show you.
Yeah, it's time to get real. We've got some pretty fascinating insights from some hosts who have been around the block. They're really pulling back the curtain and sharing what it actually takes to make it in this Airbnb world.
All right, let's unpack this thing. First up, the myth of passive income. One host actually said that Airbnb hosting is a 247 gig. He
Yeah.
told this crazy story about getting guest inquiries at like 11 p.m. while they were on vacation in Europe.
Oh, wow.
Talk about a vacation buzzkill.
That's why it's so important to set boundaries, I think. Responsiveness is obviously super important for a good guest experience, but you don't want to be chained to your phone every second of the day. So think about setting some communication guidelines, maybe even automate some of those responses, for the late night inquiries.
Oh, that's good. So you're saying proactive communication is key.
Yeah.
What about the cleaning crew situation? I always kind of assumed that once you found the right people, it was pretty hands-off.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's not that simple.
You're right, it's not. Finding reliable cleaners who get your listings aesthetic, and keep that consistent quality. It's not a walk in the park. It's not just about being clean. It's got to feel like your space. You know what I mean?
Right.
One host actually suggested putting together a visual guide or a mood board for potential cleaners to really show the vibe they're going for.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm thinking. Make it sparkle, but make it my kind of sparkle.
Exactly. And don't forget about spot checks, even with a great cleaning crew. Doing some surprise inspections every now and then can make sure everyone's on the same page, Keep those Superhost standards up.
Right, you got to stay on top of it. Speaking of staying on top of things, what happens when you, the host, want to actually stay at your own Airbnb? I mean, it sounds kind of fun in theory.
It could be, but there's a downside. Some hosts say that staying at their property turns into a working vacation. All these maintenance tasks. Unexpected repairs. Not exactly relaxing.
Ugh, that sounds stressful. So how do you, prevent turning a relaxing getaway into a fix-it frenzy?
Boundaries.
Yeah.
Seriously, you need to separate your host mode from your guest mode. Maybe schedule maintenance visits during the off-season. Or think about using a property management service while you're staying there.
Right, makes sense. Okay, so you've got communication, managing the cleaning crew, figuring out how to enjoy your own space. But how do you reach that, coveted superhost status? Is it some mythical creature?
Not at all. It's achievable, but it takes dedication and attention to detail. It comes down to exceeding guest expectations consistently in three main areas. First, responsiveness. Answer those inquiries right away, even if it's just a quick message to say you got their message and you'll get back to them.
Got it. So communication hustle. What else?
Second, low cancellation rates. Try your best not to cancel on guests unless it's absolutely unavoidable. It shows you're reliable, and guests will trust you more.
Okay, makes sense. So what's the third piece of the superhost puzzle?
Consistently positive guest experiences. This means everything. A spotless and well-maintained property. But also those little extras that people remember. Welcome gifts, local recommendations, even a handwritten note thanking guests for choosing your place.
Oh, I love that. It's about going above and beyond to show guests you care. Reminds me of something a host said. They celebrated becoming a superhost while they were camping. It's a good reminder that there are real people behind these listings, people who put their heart into making these spaces welcoming.
Absolutely, it brings that human touch. Now let's talk about something that people don't always think about. The financial side of Airbnb hosting. Obviously, the potential for income is exciting, but there are all these hidden costs that can sneak up on you.
Okay, here's where things get interesting.
One host talked about their office overflowing with boxes of towels and sheets. Turns out linen replacement is something a lot of hosts don't budget for enough.
Yeah, I can picture that. So how do you account for these hidden costs and make sure you're actually making money?
You have to be proactive and factor them in right from the beginning. I suggest putting aside a specific amount per guest for linen replacement, maybe 10 to 20 bucks depending on the quality and how much you provide.
That's a good tip. I bet cleaning costs can be all over the place too, right?
For sure. Location, property size, how often you need cleaning, it all matters. Before you even list your space, research cleaning costs in your area and include them in your budget.
Makes sense. So we've talked about the time commitment, finding a good cleaning crew, the money stuff. But there's got to be an emotional side to all this too. I mean, you're letting strangers into your personal space.
Absolutely. The emotional side of hosting is something a lot of hosts talk about. Feeling ignored or underappreciated by guests, seeing their things treated carelessly, it can be a roller coaster.
Yeah, you're putting yourself out there, which makes you vulnerable. How do you deal with that emotional side and avoid burnout?
Emotional detachment is the key phrase here. It's not about being cold or uncaring. It's about setting boundaries between your personal life and your hosting life. Think of it as a mindset shift. You're offering a service, creating a great experience. But at the end of the day, it's a business transaction.
So it's about finding that balance between being welcoming and professional.
Exactly. And proactive maintenance can really help too. Taking care of small issues before they become big problems can save you a lot of stress.
I get that. It's easier to deal with a leaky faucet than a flooded bathroom.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're mentally prepared, your place is sparkling clean, your finances are in order. But then there's guest satisfaction. You can't control how people feel about your listing, right?
That's where managing expectations comes in. One host told us about getting a 4-star review even though everyone else loved their place. It just shows you can't please everyone.
Wow, that's got to be frustrating. Especially when you've put so much effort into making your place great.
It happens. You have to develop a thick skin and remember that reviews are subjective. What one person finds charmingly rustic, another person might think needs a total makeover.
So how do you minimize those negative reviews and set yourself up for good reviews?
Clear communication is the most important thing. Be super detailed in your listing description, your photos, your house rules. If your place is more cozy cottage than luxury penthouse, just own it. Be upfront about any quirks, the neighborhood vibe, everything. Transparency is key.
Right, nobody likes surprises, especially on vacation.
Exactly. Another great tip is to make a really thorough welcome guide for guests. Include everything, Wi-Fi passwords, local recommendations, all that stuff.
Oh, that's great. It shows guests you've thought of everything and you're there to help them.
Exactly. It sets the right tone for their stay. Okay, so we've covered the time commitment, the cleaning crew situation, the emotional roller coaster, and the whole review game. What's the main takeaway here? What ties it all together?
I think it's about understanding that Airbnb hosting is more than just a side hustle or a way to make extra cash. It's about
Human connection.
exactly. We've focused a lot on the business side of things, but in the end, you're inviting people into a space you've created. You're sharing a part of yourself, and that can be incredibly rewarding.
It's about creating experiences, not just renting out a room. That human connection is what makes Airbnb so special.
And with that connection comes responsibility for both hosts and guests.
Definitely. It's about mutual respect, understanding,
Mm.
and recognizing that we're all part of this shared experience.
Well said. Now, for our listeners out there, let's get real. Knowing all of this, knowing the reality of being an Airbnb host, the demands, the challenges, the rewards, would you take the plunge?
It's a big question, isn't it? There's no easy answer.
Yeah, I think that idea of emotional detachment really stuck with me. You want your guests to feel at home, but it's your home too.
Totally. That's why being clear about expectations is so important. You can use house rules or a welcome guide to let guests know how you want them to treat your space. It's not about being super strict, more about setting the right tone from the beginning.
Right, like nobody wants to be the guest who uses a vintage coffee table as a cutting board.
Exactly. And guests also need to remember they're staying in someone's home, not a hotel. There's a level of respect and understanding that's important on both sides.
Speaking of respect, those reviews can be rough. It sounds like hosts need to be pretty tough when it comes to those star ratings, like a 4-star review when everyone else loves your place. That's gotta hurt.
For sure. Reviews can be tough. They can be super helpful for building your reputation and getting new guests, but they can also be really hard to deal with emotionally, especially when they don't seem fair.
So how do you handle those not-so-great reviews without taking it personally?
One thing is to look at the overall trend. If you usually get good feedback and those lower reviews are rare, try not to let them get to you. You can't please everybody.
Right, that makes sense. But what about when those less positive reviews highlight something you could actually improve?
That's when those reviews can actually be really helpful. If multiple guests say the same thing, like about a noisy appliance or a bed that's not comfy, it might be a sign you need to fix something.
So use those reviews as a way to learn and make your listing better.
Exactly. It's all about growing as a host.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better about the whole review thing. But honestly, after hearing about all the work involved, the cleaning, the maintenance, the constant communication, it makes you wonder if the money is really worth it.
That's the question every potential host needs to ask themselves.
Mm.
And the answer is, well, it depends. Depends on your situation, your financial goals, how comfortable you are with the risks and responsibilities.
Right. Some people love the hustle and the challenge of making their listing successful, while others might find it too much.
For sure. And location is a big factor too. Hosting in a popular tourist spot might mean more money, but also more competition and maybe higher costs.
So there's no one right answer when it comes to whether Airbnb hosting is financially worth it.
Exactly. You have to weigh the potential rewards against the time, effort, and money you'll need to invest. Do your research. Look at average rental rates in your area. Understand local rules, and be realistic about your budget.
Okay, let's say you've done your research, you're financially ready, and you're ready to put in the work and deal with the occasional tough review. What advice would you give to someone just starting out as an Airbnb host? What are the most important things to remember to set themselves up for success?
The number one thing I would say is to be genuinely hospitable. Remember, you're welcoming people into your space, creating experiences, building connections. It's not just about giving someone a bed to sleep in.
I like that. It's easy to forget about that human element when you're focused on all the logistics.
Exactly. And be yourself. Let your personality show in your listing description, your photos, how you communicate with guests. People are drawn to warmth and authenticity.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Any practical tips for setting up your listing to attract guests?
Think about what makes your space special. Highlight those things in your description and photos. Is it a beautiful view? A cozy fireplace being close to attractions? Show off what makes your place unique and let people know why it's great.
And what about photos? Those are the first thing people see, right?
Definitely. Having good photos is super important. If you can afford it, think about hiring a professional photographer. Or at least make sure your photos are well lit, clear, and show your space accurately.
No blurry fun pics?
Nope. Think about the feeling you want to create and use your photos to show that. Warm, inviting, spacious, luxurious, whatever your style is, make it visual.
Like a virtual welcome mat.
Yeah, exactly. They need to grab people's attention and make them want to learn more. Speaking of which, make sure your listing description is detailed and gives people all the info. Don't just list the amenities, paint a picture with words. Tell a story about your space and what makes it special.
And don't forget to mention those little extras that make a stay even better. Local recommendations, welcome gifts, a handwritten note.
Absolutely. Those little things show guests that you care about their experience. And finally, when it comes to pricing, do your research. Look at how demand changes with the seasons, consider your expenses, and be realistic about what you can charge.
It's about finding that balance between attracting guests and making sure you're actually making money.
Right. Remember, being an Airbnb host is a journey. Be open to feedback, learn from your experiences, and keep trying to improve. And don't be afraid to reach out to the Airbnb community.
That's a great point. Connect with other hosts, online, in person, or even just reaching out to superhosts in your area. Sharing experiences and learning from each other is so valuable.
For sure. The Airbnb community is full of passionate and helpful people who are happy to support each other.
So after all this talk about Airbnb hosting, I want to go back to that first question. Knowing everything we know now, would you take the plunge?
You know, after all this, I think I would. Not because it's easy or a sure way to get rich, but because it's a challenge, a chance to connect with people from all over the world, and an opportunity to create something special.
I get that. It's not for everyone. But for people who are willing to learn and adapt and who really love hospitality, Airbnb hosting can be amazing.
And who knows, you might find yourself surrounded by fluffy white towels sooner than you think.
Okay, maybe not surrounded, but a few extra fluffy towels never hurt.
That's the spirit. So to everyone out there thinking about becoming an Airbnb host, go for it. Embrace the adventure, learn from the challenges, and celebrate the wins. And remember, we're here to help you along the way.
We are. And if you're a super host with some wisdom to share, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. The Airbnb world is all about sharing, connecting, and creating amazing experiences for everyone.
All right, that wraps up part 2 of our deep dive. Join us for part 3, where we'll get into those hidden costs, the tax stuff, and how Airbnb fits into the world of travel and hospitality. See you soon. Welcome back to part 3 of our Airbnb deep dive. So far, we've talked about creating an awesome listing, managing guest expectations, and the emotional side of sharing your space. But there's one big thing we haven't really gotten into yet.
The money stuff? We touched on those hidden costs like linens, cleaning, welcome gifts. But let's really break down budgeting and how to make sure your Airbnb is actually profitable.
All right, let's talk numbers. What are some good strategies for managing those expenses and making sure you're not just breaking even, but actually making a profit?
It starts with having a solid financial plan from the very beginning. Track your expenses carefully, create a realistic budget, and include those recurring costs, like linen replacements, routine maintenance, those welcome
Oh,
gifts.
yeah, and taxes. It's easy to forget about those.
Absolutely. Make sure you understand the tax rules for Airbnb hosting in your area and set aside some money to cover those taxes. Talking to a tax professional, it can be really helpful to make sure you're doing everything right.
Good point. Nobody wants trouble with the tax people.
Yeah.
So we've covered the financial details, the emotional challenges, the importance of communication. But I want to take a step back for a second and think about the bigger picture. How does Airbnb fit into the whole world of travel and hospitality? Has it changed things?
Oh, definitely. Airbnb has totally shaken up the traditional hotel industry. It gives travelers a more personalized, more authentic, and often cheaper option. It's changed how people think about travel and where they want to stay.
And it's not just travelers. Airbnb has also empowered people to become entrepreneurs, sharing their homes, creating unique experiences for guests.
It's created this whole new sharing economy where people can use their assets, their skills, their passions to make money and connect with others in a meaningful way.
It's like a global village, people opening up their homes to strangers, sharing stories, cultures.
That's the beauty of Airbnb. It's not just about finding a place to sleep. It's about connecting with people, experiencing new things, creating memories that will last.
It's about those unexpected encounters, those special moments that happen when you step out of your comfort zone.
Exactly. Whether you're a host or a traveler, Airbnb offers a way to connect, discover, and understand the world better.
Well said. So as we wrap up this Airbnb deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. Embrace the adventure, whether you're a seasoned superhost or thinking about your first Airbnb stay. Be open to the possibilities, the connections, and the unexpected joys that come from stepping outside your comfort zone.
I love that. And remember, there's a whole world out there waiting to be discovered, full of welcoming spaces and new experiences.
So true. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring.